I was reading the article about Shohei Otani, who just signed a contract for worth $700 million. So he went from the Los Angeles Angels, he's going down to the Dodgers to play baseball over there. And then some of the details from his contract have emerged. So he's going to be paid out over 20 years. The
Yeah.
first 10 years of his contract, he's going to be only making $2 million. And then the last, so 2 million per year. The last 10 years of his contract, he's going to be making 68 million per year. So it got
Yeah.
me thinking about some of the tax implications of his decision. So Otani has said, or I believe they're attributing that it's his idea to get paid less up front so they can get other players so that he can go after that World Series and get that win. But
Yeah.
I got thinking, those last 10 years, if he's getting paid $68 million dollars a year,
Yeah.
depending where he lives, could he have a lower tax liability?
Yeah, so he definitely talked to his tax attorney and or his CPA, that's for sure. And I'd love to know how much his commute actually has been reduced now that he's switched teams, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, so 100%. So, the way that state taxation works is there has to be what's called some kind of nexus, right? That's a technical legal term, constitutional law term. So you have to have some kind of nexus to a particular jurisdiction for them to be able to legally tax you, right? So there has to be some kind of activity. Usually you live there, right? Or if you are there long enough and you're working, then you can also incur some type of nexus to that state. So yeah, if he were to move outside after he gets done playing, if he were to move outside of Los Angeles or even California, then he can change his domicile and perhaps sever all types of nexus with California. Maybe he moves to Texas, where I'm located, or Florida, or maybe he's from Japan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he moves back to Japan. So, point is, he could potentially completely avoid any kind of state income tax when it comes to those later years where he's receiving the vast majority of that money. So, from a tax perspective, it's pretty brilliant, and yeah. So kudos to him for making a smart move.
Yeah, and I imagine he has plenty of endorsement deals, so he's getting other money that's coming in. $2 million is a lot of money. Two
Yep.
million dollars when you're in a state that has a lot of high taxes, obviously it's going to get cut, and he has all those other things that he has to worry about.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me jump in real quick. So
yeah,
interesting. Keep your train of thought. So interesting with California, they have the highest state income tax rate. So for someone, and I forget what the threshold is, but it's basically I think $1 million more earner per year. 14 point, I believe it's almost 14%. I can't remember, it's 13.9% or it's a little over 14%, but just say 14%. So he's saving 14% on, essentially $67 million per year if he were to get out of California. So to your point, yes, he could do some serious tax savings by getting out of there. So anyway, keep going with what you were saying, endorsements and all that.
yeah, I'm sure he has other money that's coming in. So his endorsement deals, I imagine they're going to be taxed, kind of like income tax, probably,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, if he takes that money, I know other athletes do this as well, and business owners, right? So they get taxed on their income. And then they might set up some sort of investments. Are there ways that they can, kind of protect
Yeah.
their investments, mitigate their taxes with some other
Yeah.
strategies?
Yeah, or even, one of the things that we saw with like LeBron James is that, and other athletes have done this as well. I'm more of a basketball fan, so I kind of know that world a little bit better. But like LeBron, I think, he's been a heavy investor, and I think he's the first athlete or currently playing athlete who has a $1 billion net worth. Or I could be wrong about that. Maybe Tiger Woods does as well. I don't know. But anyway, a lot of times rather than saying we want royalties or we want a percentage of this or that, that we're endorsing, excuse me, that we want a percentage of ownership. And I know he did that with Beats by Dre, and then also he's a big investor in Blaze Pizza, which I've been a fan of over the years. Might have had a few pepperoni pizzas. But so let's just say, LeBron's in LA now. What happens when he wants to sell Beats? Or I think he did sell Beats. Or what happens when he wants to sell his interest in Blaze Pizza? Can he do anything to mitigate, to your point, those tax consequences as being a California resident? And this really applies to anybody who lives in a state with income tax. And the answer is yes. You can take those closely held business interests or your investment accounts, your brokerage accounts, you can move them to a trust that's located in South Dakota. Again, we like South Dakota. You always hear me talk about South Dakota. They don't have an income tax. They have incredibly flexible trust laws. They have the best asset protection trust laws, and they have incredible privacy laws around their trust. So you can move all of those assets to a South Dakota trust to avoid state income tax. So when you're selling a company for tens of millions of dollars, or you're paying a lot in capital gains from your brokerage accounts, that's a way to take that Otani approach to avoiding state income tax.
Yeah, so say you're a business owner, you're making a good salary per year, you're getting ready to sell, you know your company is worth a lot of money, and you're about to sell it. Are there ways that you can avoid some of the high taxes with the big sell-off before you sell it?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So pre-liquidity business owners are some of my favorite types of clients to work with because I really am able to provide them a ton of benefit, right? I add a lot of value to their world. And what we do is we essentially set up what's a domestic asset protection trust is what it's called. We set up a domestic asset protection trust in one of these jurisdictions, again, South Dakota, for purposes of avoiding state income tax when they do sell that business. It's been kind of the advent of domestic asset protection trusts in the U.S. that has allowed us to do this kind of planning. Historically, it's called a ING trust, ING, incomplete non-grantor trust, that allows us to avoid state income tax. And I won't go into all the details about that. California and New York have passed legislation that try to cut down on their citizens or their residents doing that type of planning to avoid state income tax, but there's still ways to actually get around that and still accomplish the same thing. But it's really been the advent of the Domestic Asset Protection Trust, the DAPT, that allows us to accomplish this kind of planning. And DAPTs are not, they don't exist in every state. So there's only really a handful of states that have them. A minority of states have them. And only maybe 3, maybe 4 are really worth setting a trust up in those jurisdictions. But really, Nevada and South Dakota stick out as the best too. But yeah, 100% we can help clients avoid state income tax by doing that kind of planning.
It seems to me the more that I talk to other attorneys that these DAPs are like flying under the radar, and that folks just unfortunately they don't know about South Dakota. They don't know like all the great trust laws they have up there. Why do you think this is?
For a variety of different reasons, and I wish I could just like pinpoint it and say it's this one thing, and we need to address this. It's good for me because it's good for business, right? But a lot of clients are not getting the type of legal services that they need because other attorneys aren't focused on this. So it's really a shame. I actually was having a conversation with an attorney earlier today, and I was kind of telling them about what it is that I do. And they said, well, you're not located in South Dakota, and you're allowed to set up trusts in another jurisdiction for clients who don't live in that jurisdiction. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. We are allowed to use the best laws that are available for clients. And so I think it's just a lack of experience and a lack of, being exposed to it. I've been fortunate enough my background lends itself to multi-jurisdictional planning. I kind of started out originally with just tax planning and it's evolved to this whole multi-jurisdictional trust planning world. So I think that's one thing. And then, you and I were talking about this recently. I watched a YouTube video of an attorney who has 45 years of experience. And I think the title of the video, I won't say exactly, but it's essentially, why you don't want to set up an irrevocable asset protection trust. And I watched the video, and everything he said about why you wouldn't want to do it was incorrect. And I don't know where he's getting his information from. He made the comment that, courts are challenging all of these DAPs, all of these asset protection trusts, but he doesn't really give any details about it or explain what that is. And anyone who's really in the know when it comes to the domestic asset protection trust world will tell you that these aren't being challenged right and left. And
Right.
if there are any issues with it, the issue that we're seeing is what's called fraudulent conveyances, fraudulent transfers. And so there are rules around when you can and can't transfer assets to a domestic asset protection trust. If you all of a sudden have a judgment against you and someone's pursuing you and trying to enforce it, you can't just avoid that creditor by moving all your assets to South Dakota or to a foreign offshore jurisdiction. They consider that a fraudulent transfer. So that's where you get in trouble. It isn't with all these. It's not just a matter of setting up the trust and they're going to fail. That doesn't exist. I see videos about that all the time online, and it's usually from the same 2 or 3 or 4 commentators, but they don't really give any details about it, right? Which is suspicious to me.
Yeah, absolutely. There was another video I saw where there was a gentleman talking about trust, and he was saying, absolutely don't use it because the government still knows that you're gonna have to pay tax, and you're still going to pay your tax. And I was thinking, well, of course, we're not trying to hide anything from the government.
No.
Like the goal of this is to protect your assets, but you're still paying your taxes, right? You're still being a good citizen, and you're still doing the things that you need to do. You're not hiding anything. So it's not a shady process, for lack of better words.
No. Yeah, 100%, right? Like it's nothing nefarious, and these laws are not set up in a way to help people who are trying to accomplish something nefarious. And so if anything, it's trying to rebalance and recalibrate this world that we live in that's so litigious, and we have attorneys that are making millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars suing everybody under the sun. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have those kind of attorneys, but I mean, that is an industry where they're just going after people right and left. And so we're trying to recalibrate and make sure that people have the tools they need to, make sure that they're not being incorrectly taken advantage of because of, attorneys who want to sue everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So one more question just to wrap up. Can you just recap just the benefits of South Dakota and the trust that you can set up in South Dakota?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different selling points on South Dakota, and probably don't have enough time to go into all the details about all the different benefits, but there's a few, right? So true dynasty trust planning. Not all states allow you to set up a trust that lives infinitely, that exists perpetually, right? Many states say that after a certain point in time, the rule against perpetuities kicks in, and all the assets from the trust have to actually be kicked out, and eventually will be subject to wealth transfer or estate tax, depending on your situation. So this allows you to completely avoid that. Next is privacy. There's really, really great privacy rules there. Not secrecy. Some people in the industry like to make that distinction, and I think it's a great distinction to make. It's privacy. It's not secrecy. I could go into more detail about that. And then the big, I think the other thing is really the asset protection, right? Being able to set up for yourself an irrevocable trust where you still have control of your assets, that you've moved into the trust, you're still benefiting from it, but you've given up enough control to change the nature of the ownership from you as an individual to the trust, to the actual trust. So, a lot of states just don't accomplish that. Like I said, we deal a lot with business owners, and business owners are really, really unique. They have a unique world. And the one thing that I keep running into more and more is business owners who have personally guaranteed different things. And so they, because of that alone, is a level of legal risk that most people will never encounter. And so what they're doing is making sure that their various business interests and their personal assets are being protected through these trust structures in case something doesn't happen. Maybe a deal goes sideways, and maybe it's no wrong of their own, but they just want to make sure that everything's protected. So, yeah.
Yeah, the benefits of South Dakota are numerous. It's fantastic.
What's your favorite aspect of South Dakota trust planning, Rob?
The asset protection. I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer. The fact that you can set up a self-settled trust in South Dakota, and you can protect your assets, you can still benefit from them, and then that there's flexibility. You know, that there's still some flexibility in these trusts that you set up when you pair it with the trust protector. To me, it's a no-brainer, and I love it. And I love it.
Yeah, So I'll pay you a compliment here. I actually, we've started saying that they're self-settled as well as self-benefiting. Rob's the one who really pointed out that they're self-benefiting, trying to communicate that really the client, is not losing any benefit whatsoever by setting up this trust, and that they continue to benefit. There are some more complex planning strategies that could be implemented for different reasons, where it's called a hybrid DAP, the hybrid domestic asset protection trust, where you could set it up for the benefit of someone else, but we have a backdoor strategy where if something were to happen with that situation, the client, the person who set it up, could ultimately be the beneficiary. So I think to your point, it is really helpful to say it's self-settled, meaning you set it up. It's also self-benefiting, meaning you yourself benefit from those assets that you put in there. So that's great.
Yeah, these trusts they're truly a beautiful thing.